In our weekly reading in Parshat Mishpatim, of course, as the name Mishpatim suggests, most of the laws, and there are a lot of laws in this Parsha, as I discussed in a different video, most of the laws have to do with laws what's called Ben Adam Lechaviro, between people. Meaning they're not ritual laws. There are a few ritual laws mentioned as well, but a lot of laws are laws that have to do with justice, with fairness, with compensation for damage and things like that. And I want to read for you a few verses in closer to the end of the Parsha, in the 23rd chapter. The Parsha starts with 21st chapter in the regular division. By the way, these divisions, the numbers in the chapters, this is not a Jewish tradition. It's just that certain Christian Bibles, I think starting with Vulgata, the Jerome's translation to Latin, he divided everything into these numbers, what we call capital. Capital is not a Jewish word. It's emphasizing that these numbers are not ours. But we also print with similar numbers today, but it's not a Jewish tradition. We don't have traditionally the division, for instance, for example, the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus. There is no tradition that there should be, for instance, 40 chapters in that book. That's how Jerome decided to divide it. But we also use these numbers today, so I'm just quoting the numbers here in order to make it easier for those who want to follow. So I'm beginning with the 23rd chapter. And here it's a verse that has a number of interpretations, but they probably don't contradict each other. They're not mutually exclusive. It could be that the Torah means all of these things. Some of these interpretations come from the times of Talmud, some are from the late authorities. I'll mention maybe a couple or a few, and the same is true about the next verse. So, Lo tisa shem ashav. What exactly does that mean? We know there is a very strict prohibition in the Torah to gossip, to speak badly of others, to listen to others speaking badly. All of these are prohibited actions. But the question is, in which particular verses are they prohibited? One verse that's usually quoted is in Parshat Kedoshim. Do not go as Rachil be'amecha. Do not walk literally, go around being a gossiper. Maybe because gossipers usually walk around, they say, here, do you want to hear the latest news? This is what A did, this is what B said about you, whatever. So that's why it says going around. Do not, al telech, do not walk as a gossiper among your people. But another possible source for a similar prohibition is this verse. According to some interpretations, that's exactly what it means. Do not maybe spread a false report. Apparently, Ben Ezra understood it in that sense. So basically, do not be a gossiper. But the Talmudic interpretation, one of the Talmudic interpretations of this verse, is that it actually prohibits to listen to the gossiping. That's what it says in Masechet Psachim and Tractate Psachim in the Talmud, that listening to gossip, one breaks this prohibition. Now, the truth is the literal translation of the word shav is not even false, but like vain, empty. The same word was used with regards to the third of the Aseret HaDibrot in the previous Parsha, in the previous reading, the revelation at Sinai. The third command was not to take Hashem's name in vain, shav. Shav and sheker are not exactly the same thing, but here it includes all of this. Of course, it's forbidden to gossip even when it's true. There are only certain exclusions when it's permitted to tell someone, to warn a person when it's necessary. But normally, speaking of other people's faults or things that people don't want others to know about, you're not allowed to do that. Right? This is all considered gossip, as the Chofetz Chaim proves in the beginning of his book. Lashon Hara, what we call evil tongue, which is the same idea. The exact differences between Rechilut and Lashon Hara are technical, but it's all included in the same prohibition. So all the gossip that's forbidden generally is forbidden whether it's true or false. Of course, false is even worse. What they call Motzi Shem Ra, a false report. But here it says Lo tisa shem ashav. There's also a technical interpretation that Talmud offers for these words. And that's also true. That's also halacha, and that is that it's talking. A lot of these verses here in the beginning of the 23rd chapter have to do with specific commands to the judges, and so in particular, the judges are not supposed to listen to one defendant before the opposing party came in, because that makes them biased. Once you hear one side of the story, it's very hard to accept the other person who may contradict it. So they have to be both in front of you, the two people who are having a monetary dispute or anything else. Whatever the defendants are, they have to be both together. You cannot hear just one side. That's also considered Shema Shav. Continuation of the same verse. Do not join forces with wicked person to be a corrupt witness. Again, there are more than one interpretation, but that's the simplest understanding. Don't follow the majority to do evil. This is a very general verse that includes a lot of different laws. The Talmud tells us, and the various other halachic books, Mechilta, for instance, halachic midrash to Sefer Shemot, all kinds of sources bring different interpretations of this verse that, again, are not mutually exclusive, and they include a lot of different commands. But the simple pshat, the simple understanding is, of course, true. Do not follow the majority to do evil, and do not speak up in a trial to pervert justice. That's how Rav Aryeh Kaplan translates it, but in his notes he of course brings all kinds of other translations based on various sources. There are a lot of laws that are learned from this particular verse. A case must be decided, he continues, on the basis of the majority. This is the general rule, both in the court and also in many other Jewish laws, since we can't always know 100% what's going on. We go by majority in a lot of laws, even in the laws of kashrut, for instance, when things cannot be checked and verified, a lot of times we have to rely on majority. If we wouldn't rely on majority, we would be in big trouble, because, let's say, any animal that we slaughter would have to be checked for all kinds of trifot, all kinds of possibilities that maybe this animal is not kosher. But we only check for something that's common. Generally, the lungs are checked because lungs are much more commonly damaged and make the animal treifa. But we don't check the heart, for instance, or the brain, or other things that may make an animal basically sick and damaged, that it would die soon, and would make it treifa. But we don't worry about that normally. An animal has a certain presumption that the vast majority of animals are certainly not that sick. Another verse: do not favor a poor man in his lawsuit. So here the idea is that the judge has to be still fair in judgment. It's a great idea to help the poor person. It's a great idea to influence the rich person to help the poor person. But then when they come to judgment, and the rich man says that the poor person, let's say, damaged his property or whatever, whatever he owes me money, you cannot say, well, just because this person is rich and the other one is poor. That's how a lot of liberals feel today. He's not gonna lose it much if we'll say that the poor person is innocent and the rich man is guilty. Let the rich man pay, right? The same thing the other way around. If a poor man says that the rich man caused me damage, but we see that according to the law he doesn't have to pay anything. We cannot just make the rich man guilty so that he pays the poor man. Right? We can't say that the rich man is always guilty because they don't lose much. Again, outside of court, it's a great thing to try to influence rich people to help the poor. But in judgment, everything has to be fair. There's, by the way, another verse a little bit later that says the opposite also. Sometimes people would respect the rich and want to show them favors, and then when they come to judgment against the poor, the judge may be inclined in order to have good relationship with the rich and powerful of this world. He might want to say that the rich is right. Moreover, maybe the judge will think along these lines. He'll say to himself, now I will publicly announce that the poor man is wrong, but later I'll tell the rich man that really you were wrong and you have to pay, but I didn't want to embarrass you publicly. None of that is permitted. The Torah specifically says, do not pervert justice in the case of a poor man, right? Of a evyon, right? Evyon, a poor man. If he is right, then you have to say that he is right, even if this is embarrassing for the rich person that is going to judgment against him. It's interesting that there is an opinion in Mechilta, which is halacha, in fact, it's quoted in Rambam in the laws of judgments, that in the laws of Sanhedrin, that if a person is a sinner, this is also called poor in a certain sense, poor in terms of his observance of mitzvot, we still cannot immediately assume that he is wrong. Meaning the judge shouldn't think to himself, if a righteous person and a poor and a wicked person, a poor in commandments, a wicked person come to me, let me just say the righteous one is for sure right and the wicked one is for sure wrong, he must be lying. You cannot say that. The judge has to be fair. Even if one of the people in front of him is already known to be a sinner, still, maybe in this particular case he is right. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt. The judgment has to be a fair judgment. That's what the Rambam explains. And on this he quotes our verse. Do not pervert judgment for your, I guess, degraded fellow, the poor in the sense of observance fellow. Do not pervert justice against him either in his lawsuit. And on this I'm going to end for today. This is just a sample, a small sample of the many commandments in our weekly Parsha, which I wanted to discuss. And if you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.